All right. Thank you, Nick. Welcome, everybody. So great to see you. Thank you for coming out on this challenging weather that we're having, but it's not snowing yet. The operative word. I'm Sheri McMahan. I'm the president of Eastern Washington University. So very delighted that you are out visiting with us this evening. Very exciting to have Richard Denenny here with us today. And Patrick's going to give him a formal introduction. This is sponsored by the School of Business and the Institute for Public Policy, and of course, Washington Trust Bank. So we thank them for their continued sponsorship of the speaker series that we have. So welcome, everyone. Let's welcome Patrick Jones. Yes, Dr. Jones. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President McMahan, and I want to echo that I'm pleased that we have so many people here on this challenging night. I'm Patrick Jones. I head up the Institute for Public Policy and Economic Analysis at the university. This is a continuation of something we started last spring in the business school. We held 3 talks, and this fall we're offering 2. This is the last of the 2, and then going forward in spring and winter and spring, we're going to offer 3 more. So stay tuned for that. We have some outstanding speakers that we're in conversations with. So the goal of the talks is threefold. As anybody who's been here before has heard me say, well, first of all, we just want you to tag along on the life somewhat within the time frame we have of a very successful Spokane business person, as they tell us what they do, how they've gotten there, and actually what they're looking for in their hires from universities like Eastern. Number 2, we hope you'll be inspired, because there's a lot of really wonderful things that have happened in these people's lives, and I think Richard is going to be no exception when you hear his story. And then the last thing is to have fun, and that can take place in many different ways, but first of all, to interact with the speaker, to interact with your seatmates, if you will, people who are here. And then, of course, in keeping with the tradition of our new series, there's going to be food and drink. And drink, unfortunately, just being water tonight. So have to put up with that. So there's 3 parts to the program, if you want to call it that. There's the talk by our speaker. There's going to be a question and answer that's moderated by Professor Michael Adams, who's hiding behind the curtain, who teaches business law here in the business school. And then we've allocated 30 minutes for mingling and having something to eat. So I think I have got one further introduction to do. We have our associate provost for the College of Public Programs, not public programs. What do we call PP, Amanda? Professional programs. Would you stand up and just take a bow? We're happy to have her represented here. She's former chair of the social work department. Okay, now on to the main show. Richard Denenny, if you wouldn't mind coming up, Richard, is the president and CFO of Moat Metrics, a tech firm that he co-founded here in Spokane in a different guise a few years ago. And he'll explain just how that happened. Before that, Richard was the CEO of Lee & Hayes, which is the largest intellectual property law firm in the Pacific Northwest, something that we should be quite proud of here in Spokane, Washington. Before that, Richard started his own company. And before that company, well, you just get the picture. He's done quite a few things. Richard is a Spokane native. He graduated from Central Valley High School. He then went on to Western Washington University. And before becoming a lawyer, he was a proud ski bum for 2 years in Alta, Utah. And I don't think he's going to talk too much about that, but you can maybe afterwards. Then he went to University of Arizona Law School, and after graduating #1 in his class, he clerked for the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Arizona. After that clerkship, he began to represent Starbucks on all its filings in the Security and Exchange Commission, and told me he reckons that he worked 200 different deals with various companies as a commercial lawyer in Arizona. He then decided that the northern latitudes were a good place to return to, so he came back to Spokane, became very involved in general business and startup organizations. And Spokane is what we're going to talk about right now. So please give a warm Eagle welcome to Richard Denenny.
There you go. Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate the opportunity. So when Patrick first asked me and approached me about giving a little talk here tonight, I said, okay, yeah, sure. What do you want me to talk about? And he said, well, just walk through your career. And my first thought was, you have no idea how many different jobs I've had, and my ability to keep a job is fairly unparalleled. And then I asked how long we're going to have, and he said 25 minutes. I said, well, we'll see how quickly we can go on this thing to cover it all. So Richard Denenny, and we'll go and get started and just sort of walk through my journey, sort of the baseline. Patrick talked about it, get it out of the way first. So I'm a corporate securities M&A attorney by background. Spent the first part of my career in Arizona and then at a huge law firm in Seattle called K&L Gates. My practice was about a third of it was public company SEC reporting. So Starbucks was my largest client. So I did all of their Qs and Ks. A third of my practice was sell side, middle market M&A work. So primarily dealing with entrepreneurs in the sale of their business. And then a third of my practice was emerging company startup practice. Did that, and it was actually my partnership year when I was there, and started to project out over the rest of my career and sort of had that first itch to say, is this really what I want to do? And sort of at that stage in my career and where I was at, it was sort of considered just absolutely crazy that you would switch gears and give up the sort of the partnership position and everything it is at the huge firm. But nonetheless, I wanted something more, and I wanted to try to do something. I really struggled with this idea of being a service provider, feeling like I was helping other people do things, but I wasn't really the one doing those things. And so really started to want to do it. And thankfully, a gentleman by the name of Fred Brown at a company called Next IT. Anyone here know Next IT by chance, or little? Okay, a couple of people in here. So Next IT, natural language processing company, headquartered here in Spokane. At the time, it was a 160-person late-stage startup doing natural language processing primarily for virtual assistants for web self-service. So it was really Siri for business before Siri was a thing. And it was really sort of one of the first companies to work on the voice interface. And instead of really doing talk to text and then sort of the interpretive engine behind it. Fred found a 35-year-old attorney who I worked with for a number of years, and decided to bring me on board. And so I made the jump, took my then 3-month-old son across the country, massive pay cut, and told my wife that hey, we're gonna take a go at this entrepreneurial journey. And it was something that changed my career forever. So at Next IT, I took on the role of Chief Operating Officer and CFO. So I ran the day-to-day business on that one. It was a little bit of a turnaround situation, or not even a real turnaround situation, all predicated on, so like anyone here read Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore? Seminal book, you should read it. So the core thesis for that book, and it plays itself out with most companies, is that you come to market with a new technology. In the case of Next IT, it's these virtual assistants for web self-service. And you find yourself with some initial early traction for innovators. And then you find your early adopters. And you start to get the sense of, oh my gosh, there's all this commercial traction, that there's this huge market opportunity in front of us, and we're going to do it. And then all of a sudden things stall and you can't do it. And they call that the chasm. And it's sort of it's a very, very common theme. So at Next IT, the primary issue that we were facing was, how do we go from early adopters? So we'd signed the Army, we had Delta Airlines, we had Alaska Airlines, we had Cigna, we had Aetna, we had all these premier clients out there that were early adopters, but then it got stagnant and then we're struggling to do it. So the main challenge there was trying to cross the chasm and to do it in a way without running out of money and be able to do that. So that was the big challenge there. And we can get into specifics on each one of these, but in the interest of time, we'll sort of move on. So from Next IT, which ended up being acquired by a company called Verint, which was a large publicly traded company doing self-service solutions, I went to Telect. Anyone here know Telect? Okay, one or two. We're getting a few people to know it. So Telect's a really fascinating company in Spokane. Back in 2001, it's owned by the Williams family, or was owned by the Williams family. They filed an S1, which is sort of the main registration statement you filed to go public, at a $1.5 billion valuation. At the time, they were the largest private employer in the entire region, all tied to the telecom industry. And so for those that are familiar with like World Crossings and some of the disasters that occurred, there was this massive bubble around infrastructure equipment in the telco market. Telc was a beneficiary of that, but then it was also a victim of that. And so what was once a 1,500 person company sort of was gradually in declining categories and going down and down and down. I joined them after Next IT, running all the customer facing parts of that business. And the main thing we were dealing with there is, and I'll throw another book out there for you. There's another Jeffrey Moore book called Escape Velocity. And it deals with this whole idea of the innovator's dilemma, which is really sort of focused on this key principle that you've got a company with an existing revenue stream. You tend to stay focused on that revenue stream, and you do that one the whole time, sort of forgetting about innovation in and outside of that one. And so you find yourself in declining categories over time. And for Telec, the big issue there, massive success early on, tied to legacy telecom, doing infrastructure equipment. What does that mean in real terms? Landlines. So it was selling landline equipment for that infrastructure and the back-end infrastructure. So an obvious declining category at the same time where the enterprise market and the data center market was starting to take off. And so my primary job there was to run the product team, sales team, and marketing teams in a way that created enough free cash flow to then get into the fiber market and the enterprise market and the data center market and to be able to do that. The way we were sort of able to do that was, and this is just borrowing from what Jeffrey Moore's book says on this thing, but we followed that playbook fairly religiously. It's focusing on what you're really, really good at and then creates a disproportionate bet into that area to sort of try to create enough momentum to escape the velocity of your core business. So your core business is going this way. It's a declining category. You know where it's going. How do you reverse that? You make a disproportionate bet, and you make that bet in an area where you have the expertise to really be able to execute on it, be able to do it. So that was the Telec story. Telec ended up being acquired by Amphenol, which is a large publicly traded private equity shop, still run as a standalone business, still here in Spokane. After Telec, I went to Lee & Hayes, and Patrick touched on this one. So Lee & Hayes, really kind of unique story. Patent law firm, primarily patent law firm, headquartered here in Spokane, 160 folks, 7 offices across the country. It's the only national law firm headquartered here in Spokane. Started out, so patent people here by chance? Okay, quick little thing on patents. So the US Constitution, fascinating document for a lot of different reasons, but at the time it was the only constitution in the world that recognized a property right in your idea. So Article 3, Section 8 says that you have a property right in your idea. And you know, and through my career, I've been very fortunate to travel across the world. And at Lee & Hayes, I represented a few Chinese-based clients for U.S. acquisitions, and go over there and be able to do that. And everyone's like, oh, and we sort of beat ourselves up over a lot of different things. But then when I'd be over there, like, how is the U.S. so innovative? Like, we're the most innovative country in the world, and how do we do it? And one of the reasons why is that I think our forefathers had the foresight to understand that creating a property right in your ideas can spur innovation. And the whole basic regime is that if you have a new, novel, non-obvious idea, and you're willing to publicly disclose that innovation to the world, you can exclude anyone else from using that idea for a period of 20 years. So then innovation spurs on innovation. One of the problems with it was that the Patent Act didn't cover software applications up until the early 90s. So you never saw any companies that were doing any sort of software applications. Sort of the theory of that was that you had to write hardware-based patents, and sort of how you were executing on these things, the hardware behind it, in order to get patent protection. The problem with that is hardware changes so quickly that it becomes pretty obsolete fairly quickly. Fortunately, Congress did patent reform in the early 90s and created the ability to create patent assets on software applications. Lewis Lee, the founder of Lee & Hayes, at the time was a George Washington law student, and he helped his professor write a book called IP Gold. And there was an advocacy piece around why the Patent Act had to be amended to bring in software applications. Congress passed legislation. Microsoft got a hold of Lewis Lee and said, we have less than 50 patents at this time, but now that we have the ability to actually secure patent protection around our innovations, we'd like you to be our outside counsel. So Lewis founded Lee & Hayes, and Microsoft was the firm's first client, and to this day has filed more patents for Microsoft than any firm in the world. Got another rocket ship with a little bookstore company called Amazon, another one with Meta, another one with Cisco. And so people don't really realize it, but Lee & Hayes, 4 years in a row for #1 patent firm in the nation for quality, and headquartered here in Spokane. So I had the privilege of being the CEO of Lee & Hayes. Other macro trend here, and this is very much applicable for the current company that I helped co-found, is you go back, 300 years, agrarian society, moved to an industrial society. In 1965, the wealthiest country or the wealthiest city in the United States, maybe in the world, was Detroit, Michigan. 1975, 92-ish% of the value of the S&P 500 was in property, plant, and equipment. You can see sort of the 5 most valuable companies in the index at that point in time. But then there's this massive rotation in asset classes that occurred, and we moved away from being an industrial economy into an innovation economy. And so today, fast forward today, over 95 or 92% of the value of the S&P 500 is in intangible assets. And we see it all the time. It's the largest retailer in the world, doesn't own any storefront. The largest taxi company in the world doesn't own any taxis. The largest provider of taxi services doesn't own any taxis. And so go on and on from there. And so at the end of the day, patents are the asset created through protected innovation. And so that's kind of the Lee & Hayes story. There's obviously a lot more to go into there. That was another one of those turnaround situations to be able to do it, but that one. While at Lee & Hayes, so I took over Lee & Hayes in 2015, we had a small business unit called 601 West, and it was an IP analytics group that was servicing a few larger companies around portfolio development. So where they should build their patent assets and why and how that should look like. One of our clients was Aon. So Aon's a huge $70 billion publicly traded insurance brokerage firm. And Aon approached Lee & Hayes and wanted to buy 601 West and be able to do it. And so we sold 601 West to Aon. Louis Lee, the founder of the firm, went with 601 West and that team to Aon and formed what they called Aon IP Solutions. Kind of going back to this whole change in rotation of asset classes from the industrial economy to the innovation economy. One of the sort of interesting sort of results of that is that insurance premiums, so when you think about insurance, it makes sense. So you're generally talking about property and casualty and physical damage to those types of things. So what happens to insurance premiums in a world in which, 92% of the value in the S&P 500 is in intangible assets? So starting in the mid 1980s, you've actually seen insurance premiums not keeping up with GDP growth. And it's because insurance products don't resonate in the intangible asset world. So Aon bought 601 West with the idea of building out a technology and a platform to bring insurance products to the intangible asset market. Louis and the team were able to do that, launching a IP liability insurance product and a collateral protection insurance product that allowed growth stage companies to leverage their intellectual property to raise capital. Was a big success on that one. Then in June of this last year, Aon agreed, and sort of realizing that Aon was not going to be a software company. So this technology we built out was an internal tool designed to help the insurance brokerage team sell insurance products, but realized that that's all it really could be within Aon. They'd built out the whole ecosystem. They launched these new product areas. And so they agreed to allow myself, Louis Lee, and the other co-founder, Sam Fleming, to buy the technology out of Aon. And we put the contract back to Aon. So we launched Moat Metrics. We formally exited Aon in June 11th was the official date for the closing, and launched Moat Metrics. Moat Metrics, 25-person market intelligence software company. This was a really important thing for me. Headquarters in Spokane. Really wanted to be a headquarters in Spokane. Kind of going back to the next IT story on it. At the time, it really was a crazy decision, as was maybe leaving Lee & Hayes and doing this. But the big thing for me with that one was Fred Brown, the founder, had this idea that you could build a technology company in Spokane and that you could do it in Spokane. And there just had to be sort of that lightning bolt event to sort of spur it on and make that happen. And Next IT and being a part of that story was a huge driver for me. And while we had some success at Next IT, it never really did what we hoped it would do as far as the exit and the opportunity in this community. getting another chance at it with Moat Metrics is that opportunity to do it again. So really important for me. So we're a Spokane headquartered software company. 17 of the 25 of us are in Spokane, primarily the research and development team. So one of the sort of hidden secrets about Spokane, and a lot of it ties back to Next IT, is there's a real expertise around machine learning and natural language processing in this world, and it comes back from Next IT. So a lot of those Next ITers are now at Aon, or we're at Aon, and now we're at Moat, leveraging that. And what we're trying to do here is, what did I say here? So central sort of marketing pitch: innovation is the soul of the company. So in an innovation-driven economy, if you want to do any type of investment or deploy capital with respect to a company, you should understand their innovation behavior, both from a competitive positioning perspective, an exit scenario perspective, and from a risk perspective. Our core product, Innovation Alpha, happy to walk people through this in detail, but the core breakthrough that we had is, so 13 million patents filed in the US. Underneath each one of those patents is a whole host of claim language that describes what that patent covers. And so there's roughly 66 billion data points in the patent world. So we took that universe of that domain knowledge with NLP, machine learning principles at play, mapped it, structured it, mapped it, and then mapped it against markets and products. So we can pull up any private or public company and show their innovation behavior. So last week, Reuters, 2 weeks ago, Reuters got a hold of me. I put out a couple of messages around Tesla and the robo-taxi event, and Reuters picked up on it and got a hold of me and said, okay, what is Tesla really doing around robo-taxi? And through Innovation Alpha, we can sort of quickly understand that it's not Tesla innovating in the full service driving autonomy suite of solutions. It's really they're using NVIDIA solutions to be able to do that. And it was a 90-minute speech to be able to do that one. But that ability to track innovation, map it to markets, then map it to products so that you can really understand what a company is really doing. And that's what we're doing. Lessons learned. How are we doing on time, Michael? Wow, am I talking too fast? Yeah, well, we got a whole other things. Okay, so lots of lessons learned. One of them, somehow it didn't make it into the slide presentation, is went from running a software company, then went to a network equipment manufacturing company. So physical layer infrastructure, software, to physical layer infrastructure manufacturing company. And going from a high-tech world to a manufacturing world, I sort of had this whole thesis that said, wait a second, there's money to be made in low-tech businesses, and it's overlooked. And not only that, but there's some low-hanging fruit in the sort of what I call non-sexy businesses that aren't necessarily there for high-tech businesses as far as improvement areas, all that one. So I made a little bit of money on Next IT, and so went through this whole process. I'm going to buy a non-sexy business, and ended up doing it. Bought a little company called UltraShred, about a $3 million a year business, manufacturing. And this will make you all laugh, but manufacturing shredding trucks, mobile shredding trucks. You see them around there for a world that is no longer using paper. So you want to talk about buying a declining category and be able to do it. The whole thought process in theory, though, was that, and it's absolutely true, that you can buy a company in a low margin business and even in a declining category, as long as you own that's who you are and what you're going to do. And then you develop, just like we did at Telk, you develop the strategy that says, we're going to harvest that free cash flow to then get into new areas. So I was just the owner of UltraShred, had a CEO that was in place that was running it. But then we took that business and then built out another business off of it called Tidy's Beautiful Bins. This is a huge humbling hill, that one. So manufacturing bin washing trucks. So that was the whole idea, is that for a monthly subscription, so we built out these trucks. They had a bunch of pressure washing equipment on, and be able to do that and take that to market. Absolute complete failure. Absolute failure. Although it did sell the trucks in the business to a guy in St. Louis who calls me out once a year, telling me how well he's done. So it was failure of execution, not necessarily the worst idea in the world. And then for UltraShred, sort of the lesson there was, great in theory. It's a profitable business to this day, but being a passive owner in a small business while you're working a full-time job running a law firm is a really hard thing to do. So I ended up selling it to the CEO, and by selling it to the CEO, I basically said, you take over the loans, get me off all this paper, and it's yours. So anyway, I forgot that little piece of my history on it all. So anyway, corporate securities attorney, software executive, manufacturing executive, start a couple little small businesses, largely failures, ran a law firm, was also, I should note the fact there, I was the chair of our emerging company practice, really proud of what we were able to do there, serving startups in the community, and then joined Aon and now Moat, and now I'm the president and CFO of Moat. So lessons learned. Leadership types and your execution mode matter a ton. And this is something that I really learned primarily with Tidy's Beautiful Bins and trying to launch that venture, that I am without question sort of in that deployment mode. I'm not the idea person. I'm not the one that comes on with that new idea and then wants to do it. I'm also, and I sort of going back on I get this question a lot. It's like, why would you leave Lee and Hayes? And it's like, well, it got boring. It was a turnaround, is there and doing that one, but it gets boring. So that optimization stage, and yeah, it's great to make that money and to be able to do it, but it's just boring. I'm in the deployment stage. I'm that loves to just sort of I'm unbelievably competitive. I love to just experiment. For people that work with me or know with me, I'm very sort of quick, often too quick to make decisions on things that I know nothing about. That's me. But I think as entrepreneurs, as you sort of think about where you fit and who you are, understanding what type of leader you are and the core attributes associated with, and what stage the company you're going to is at and where you'll fit best, unbelievably important. The second thing that I learned, as an attorney, sort of, you go through law school and you're constantly arguing who's right, who's wrong, and all these different things. And then you get into business. And so, joined NextIT at 35. My first task there was to cut 20% of the headcount. So come in, the board asked me to sort of run the day-to-day, and step one was, Rich, this is our runway. It's this many months. You need to make it this many months. Well, what that means is the variable you control there is cost. And so the first thing I did was a 20% reduction in force. And sort of sitting there thinking, I'm this 35-year-old corporate securities attorney whose only leadership responsibility had been editor-in-chief of the Law Review. And I was talking to my wife at the time and saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to get killed on this thing. How are we going to do this? And it starts with this idea of just getting everyone to align. So agreeing means you're right or wrong, and that doesn't really matter. What really matters, especially from a leadership perspective, is to get the universe of ideas and get everyone on board with those ideas and align behind it. And if you get stuck into this paradigm of you need to be right, you need to do that, and no one ever agrees with you, and you do that one and no one aligns behind it, you'll have no success. But if you can align, even if it's a suboptimal approach. So you come into this thing and there's this fallacy of, and I talk about this in another slide, this idea of like the leadership just knows the right answer in the case. So as a leader, even if you have this idea that I know how I would do this, and this is the way it should be X, Y, and Z, and you think that one, and then you want to sort of universally mandate that, especially at any level of scale, and your team doesn't buy in, you'll have no success. But instead, if you understand as a leader that, okay, we need to be directionally accurate, and that's a term I always use for business and for the team, you understand the guardrails of where the decisions need to fit within, and it needs to be somewhere within here. And the team ends up picking a solution that is directionally accurate, but maybe you consider it suboptimal from the decision you'd make, go with their decision. Go with their decision that enables people to have alignment, to get behind it, and you don't spend your time trying to get and force agreement, because the reality is you'll never get it. I've fired way too many people in my life. It's something, so for both NextIT, Telect, and Lee and Hayes, they were all turnaround situations. And in each situation, it was pretty much a complete revamping of the executive team and significant portions of the overall organization. And I've always taken a fairly ruthless approach to address your underperformers. It's hard, but when people aren't doing well in their job, they know it, you know it, and it's not good for anyone to just sort of allow that to continue. And so creating a high-performing culture and team requires you to be fairly ruthless in identifying your underperformers and doing something about it. On the flip side, mobilize and get behind your superstars. That it is not sort of, when you look at employees and personnel and productivity and what they get done. It is not a linear equation. It's your superstars can be 10x what another person can be. So identify your superstars, give them as much ceiling as possible, and understand and sort of embrace this idea that as a leader, your primary job is to remove obstacles and just to allow them to reach their ceilings, be able to do it. So find your superstars, empower them, get out of their way, remove obstacles, address your underperformers, and don't be afraid to do it. This is the one where I was talking about, you don't have to know everything. It was crazy. My now ex-wife, was sitting there saying, wait, you're going to go run a software company and you've never done software before. And then you go to Telect and it's like, wait a sec, you're going to run all the customer facing parts of this network equipment manufacturing company and you've never been in the telecom space or the manufacturing space. You're going to go to a patent law firm, but you're a corporate securities M&A attorney, and all these things. And the reality is you don't need to know everything. What you have to be is intellectually curious, be able to sort of understand and ask questions, find the people that you can rely on and trust on, and be able to go forward with it. But this idea of if you're waiting because you need to be a subject matter expert or you have to be, all this experience in a particular world, you don't. Can it be helpful? Sure, of course, but it's not a requirement. And going into a situation, embracing this idea that you don't have to know everything and being authentic about that and being with him, that you're not there to necessarily impose a particular vision on what it needs to be or what it has to be. You still can be an effective leader without necessarily being a subject matter expert if you ask and you engage, you want to do it. So we left out a whole bunch of slides here thinking this thing was going to take way too long, but Michael, we ready? All right. Which side do you want, bud?
I'll take this one. Hello, I am Professor Adams. I teach business law here at EWU. Richard and I had a chance to talk a few days ago and got to learn a lot about his amazing, kind of crazy career. So I recognize I have some of my students here tonight, and they'll know a couple things about me. One, I love to talk about legal education and careers. Also, I don't go anywhere without my water bottle. So I've got the EWU Veterans Center sticker facing out, so at least we got the brand shown here. But when I was asked to come and speak with you, I think the idea was I'm the token attorney on the faculty, so maybe this guy speaks the same language. Mm-hmm. When we were talking, I learned that your career is anything but a traditional legal career. So you started out going to University of Arizona first in your class, and then you clerk for the state Supreme Court justice. Mm-hmm. How did you end up really getting from there to here? Because you're not really practicing a legal career.
No, not at all. It's interesting. So, going back in time, I was a ski bum, tore my ACL. Sort of the second last weekend at the resort. I had no idea what I was going to do for the next stage of my career. Growing up, kind of a little background. I have the worst formal education of anyone in the room. I always tell people this. My 8th grade point average was a 2.3, and I was an athlete first, football player, and that was my whole focus as I was sliding through the cracks. But I had this one friend, James Sheri was his name, and who was my smart friend, and I'd test into these different classes with me, and that's how I got to know James. So James did not take a couple years off between undergrad and law school, and went to law school. He's like, Rich, you would be an awesome attorney. I'm like, well, I'm going to have ACL surgery and I have nothing to do, and what's it going to be? And he's like,
so why not law school?
So why not? And he said, take this thing called the LSAT. And I said, really? Okay. And he said, yeah, just take a practice test. And so what's not known about the whole ski bum thing. So I was a ski bum in the winter, and then I was a nanny in the summer. So one of the families that came to Alta, I worked at a place called Rustler Lodge at Alta, and towards the end of the season, the first year there, said, hey, what are you doing in the summer? I said, well, the bad thing about being a ski bum is I have no idea. And so said, why don't you come down to Southern California? And they had 4 kids, a 4, 6, 8, and 10-year-old. And I was actually their activities coordinator, which means that you have these super, super rich parents that you say, hey, I think it'd be fun to take the kids to whatever that day and all that one. So anyway, really spectacular family. James says, take the practice LSAT. Lori Evanson, the mom, says, that's a great idea. She buys me all the materials, takes this test, and then I take it for the first time. And I'm like, I've always been a really good test taker. And so I'm like, wow, okay, because they give you the percentages where you fit on this thing. And then the competitive piece on me comes into it and says, oh, well, and I also have a huge chip on my shoulder. And I'm like, oh, there's all these fancy kids out there and all that. Well, I'm going to kick their ass. And so I started doing it. The whole time, I didn't know a single attorney. I didn't even know what attorneys did. But then I just sort of found myself going down this path and going that one. And then all of a sudden it became, okay, well, I'm doing exceptionally well at this. I had great grades in college. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, I'll go to law school if I can get into a top tier law school without any debt. And then University of Arizona came through with this scholarship offer, and I found myself in law school, walking in the first day with no idea. I'll never forget the first time they did on-campus interviews, and they were presenting these summer associate positions. And I'm like, whoa, they pay that? I had no clue. So anyway, so I ended up graduating from law school and clerked my first year because that's, whatever, it's something they tell you to do. And then
It's a very prestigious thing to clerk for a Supreme Court
no, for sure.
justice.
For sure. No, it was a huge, great opportunity. And Justice McGregor was amazing, and being able to be a part of helping draft law in Arizona was incredible. And but then I went to work for this appellate law firm. It was this super high-end law firm. People, this isn't necessarily a legal crowd, but clerking for the United States Supreme Court is like the highest thing in the world. There's so few people. So Osborne Maladon's the name of the firm, had 42 attorneys doing appellate law. 8 of them were U.S. Supreme Court clerks. And so unbelievable, super high-end law firm. And I get into appellate law. Hated it. So they gave me this signing bonus when I got on board there. And this is way too long a story. Gave me this signing bonus. More money than I'd ever got in my life. Went to the bike store and bought a bike, which at that point in time was the single most expensive thing I'd ever bought in my life. It was $1,500. Still have that bike to this day. Went to work at this law firm. Part of my contract was I had to stay there a year. Or in theory, I had to give the money back. All I kept doing for my first 6 months was counting down the days. I'm like, screw it. I don't have debt from law school. I'm going back to being a ski bum. This is the most miserable thing ever. Thankfully, Hillary Barnes, and I email Hillary every couple of years just saying thank you to her. We had a settlement negotiations on one of our cases, and the partner I was working on with the case wasn't able to make it to the settlement negotiations. So as a second-year associate, and I was only a second-year associate because they gave me credit for my clerkship, was sitting there negotiating a settlement of this litigation. They had Hillary come in and sort of oversee me, so they at least had a partner in the room. And we were able to reach an agreement in the case and be able to do it. And Hillary pulled me aside and said, Richard, what are you doing? And I go, what do you mean? She goes, you're a business attorney. I was like, what's a business attorney? I have no idea, and had truly no idea. Thankfully, this appellate law firm had a really, really small emerging company practice, and they were super busy, and they gave me the opportunity, and it changed my career to be able to do it. So that's sort of how the whole legal practice got started and how I got in. If it weren't for Hillary, I would have quit. Literally, I would have quit after that first year. But then all of a sudden, it allowed me to move away from this whole profile of being an attorney where you're fighting with each other and it's a zero-sum game to being with business people that at the end of the day want to reach agreement on things. That the only reason why the investor is talking to that company is because they like the company and they want to invest. And the company is only talking to the investor because they need and want the money. Now, you need to work, you need to negotiate it, and there's certainly adversarial positions on the whole thing, but at the end of the day, you're building something constructive, or that's how I felt about it.
Can you give an example? Like, what were you doing when doing the appellate work compared to what you were doing when you moved into the business law unit?
Well, the appellate work is a lot of brief writing, and oh man, it was miserable. I'd find myself, waking up, and so you're putting together legal arguments and why the trial court got it wrong, or why they got it right, and so you're putting together all these different legal arguments, and like Osborne Maladon handled a huge important case called Bring v. Arizona, which dealt with jury sentencing for trials, or for jury verdicts for sentences, and so you're going through it, and you can go all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, but it's all around researching the law and writing briefs in support of either again, why I was right or why I was wrong should get overturned. And I would find myself, you'd sit there and you'd draft this brief, you'd submit it, and you'd go and you'd file it.
And you spent hours drafting those.
No, it's you work
Days.
you work a lot. Yes, it was incredible. All that, some of those cases I still remember to this day. And then you'd all of a sudden then get a response brief. You get something back, and you'd read it. And then as a junior associate, I'd be like, oh my gosh, because I got it wrong. I totally goofed it up. I'm wrong. And then you're also going through and you're doing what they call site checking, and you're sort of understanding if, this, for every sort of assertion you're making, not every, but you're sort of finding legal support for that assertion, why it's wrong. Because in the law, you follow precedents. It's statute and precedent on this thing. And so you're finding legal support for each one of your arguments, and you go through this whole process of validating whether it's true or not. Unbelievable granular work and doing that one. And it was that pit in my stomach. I mean, I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and find myself on Westlaw, triple checking my site checks and making that one, and then getting that response brief back and be able to do it. And it was just fighting, versus on the business side of it, especially the role that I was fortunate enough to be able to have with my clients, is you're somewhat, if not actually an extension of that team and trying to achieve business objectives. And it's not always around, and it was one of the huge lessons from going from outside counsel to in-house. As an attorney, you'll find yourself fighting over, an indemnification provision or a knowledge qualifying rep and warranty or a limit of liability, or all these different things that as an attorney you think that are super, super important. Then you're on the business side and you quickly realize, the only thing that matters is getting this thing signed and the money in the door. And so you're a part of that. And it's just that it's non-adversarial. I shouldn't say it's non-adversarial, because you still have competing interests, but they're directionally aligned towards the success of the company.
And so then after that, you had a few other stops along your career path. Yeah, worked at K&L Gates and then Lee and Hayes, which are both very, very highly regarded law firms, very charitable as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, great firms. And I ended up at K&L Gates because once I realized that I wanted to be, a corporate securities attorney, that's not really, Osborne Mallet, an amazing firm, best firm in Arizona by far, and for what they did, but it's an appellate law firm. And I really wanted to inject myself into an environment where I saw deal flow and really could gain expertise. And I reached the conclusion that the best opportunity for me to do that was to join a large law firm that would have enough access to deal flow to really sort of gain that expertise. And so that's why I ended up at K&L Gates and doing that. And I also wanted to get back to the Northwest. This has always been my home, and Seattle's, because I think I see Rick Rep back there maybe. So, Rick's, if you need corporate securities work, Rick's your guy in town. Spokane's a really small market for that. And there's not, Seattle's sort of the huge market. So as a junior associate, felt like I needed to be in Seattle to get the deal flow and be able to do it. And so that's how I ended up at K&L Gates.
Okay. Well, so the students that are here tonight, most of them are in some different aspect of a business or accounting major. Not everyone, but many are. I could talk for hours about the benefits of legal education, but for you personally, do you feel like your legal education helped you get where you are today?
Well, I feel like I have to say yes to that, but
you don't have to. I already know where you'd go with this.
Yeah, no, it's so I'm an old dad. I've got a 14-year-old son and a 10-year-old son, or 11-year-old son. And we talk a lot about careers and all that stuff. Never once do I encourage them to go to law school. And my hope and dream for them is to take a risk and become an entrepreneur. The practice of law is an it's a great profession. I was very fortunate sort of with my path. I think it's very rare for an attorney to be able to make that transition out of especially big firm practice and then into the entrepreneurial range. Some of that is, in order to do that, you need to be willing to sacrifice a lot of compensation and take on a lot of risk. The general attorney profile, that doesn't fit it. And that one. But law school, it really does change the way you think and sort of, the analytical sort of process and sort of being able to create frameworks and be able to work through it is a very powerful thing. Law school also allowed me to access business leaders almost immediately and sort of get into the decision making room really early in a way that I don't think would have been possible without being an attorney. But I am not the advocate for going to law school.
It's fair enough.
Especially if you have to take on a lot of debt. It blows my mind when I talk to some of these poor students and like, oh boy.
Well, I want to turn the time to the audience in just a moment for any questions that anyone else may have. But knowing now that you would say maybe law school isn't the right path for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you could go back and talk to yourself either right before college, right after college, before law school, or as you started your career after earning your JD, is there any advice you would give to yourself in any of those three stages?
Yeah, it's interesting. So graduated from college in 1998. So sort of the height of the internet boom at the time, and all of my friends are taking jobs in Seattle with various companies and be able to do it. And my mom, who's an unbelievable badass, quick story on my mom. So, at 50, so my mom was the president of the Spokane Mountaineers, summited every major summit in the region. At 50 years of age, she decided that she was going to hike the Pacific Crest Trail before Reese Witherspoon made that a cool thing to do. And so she is an amazing woman, still is 74 to this day, and she'll still kick any one of our asses on our trail. And her advice to me was Rich, don't just go take a job. Don't take a job. That when you graduate from college, there's a window of opportunity to gain an experience or do something that you'll never have the opportunity to do at another point in your life. And whatever that decision is, even if it doesn't work out or it's not, the thing, you're going to look at your friends who all took these jobs and you're going to think, oh, they're doing well and they're getting ahead and they're making all this money or whatever the case may be. And she said, but the reality is they're just going to spend that money they make and they're going to do it. And then 10 to 15 years from now, real talent level will reveal itself. You're going to end up in the same space you were going to be otherwise. But what you had is this opportunity in your life to do something you never would have done. Now, I took that advice and said, hell yeah, I'm going to go be a ski bum then. Let's do it.
I considered it too.
Well, there you go. My advice to my kids and what I would have said is, take that couple years and join a startup. Stretch yourself from an entrepreneurial perspective. Give it a go and make it happen. With securing the knowledge that even if it's a complete utter failure, you're going to learn a ton. You're going to expose yourself. You're going to meet people, and then sure, maybe you go back to business school or maybe go that. So that would be my advice. But that being said, I feel I'm so fortunate with life, and it's that same super smart friend James Tree Fry. We'd have beers, and I sort of would always find myself thinking about, hey, what if I would have done that? And James's response was always like, Rich, are you happy with where you're at? I'm like, yeah. He's like, then why do you spend an ounce of time thinking about what you would have done different? He's like,
find the work that makes you happy.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, I do want to turn to the audience. Does anyone have a question for Mr. Denenny? I don't know if there were any plants that were put out there ahead of time or anything. So it's kind of hard with the glare too. Okay. Well, if there are no questions right now, I did have a few other questions for you. You had said that when you are moving into a new business, that you're all about that deployment stage, that's where you live. I've been told before that I am the good idea fairy, but I don't know what to do with ideas. Like I spin in my head with something and then, does anyone help me do this? How do you find people that kind of can complement your skill set as an entrepreneur? So that, because you can't all be living in the deployment stage, you need some people with the vision and the idea. How do you network and find people to really start an entrepreneurial project with?
Yeah, it's hard to sort of use my experience as an example. It's been very much ad hoc. I've never planned a single career move, so I can't keep a job, but I've never quit a job. It's always been sort of and never been fired yet. That'll happen, I'm sure. But it's always been, I'm presented with a new opportunity that sounds super fun and want to do it. Early in my career, I didn't necessarily appreciate sort of the different skill sets and how it would work and the complements between the two. But Lewis Lee, who's one of the co-founders of Moat, Lewis is that idea guy, and he is that, he's that visionary leader that can understand directionally where it should go and how it should be. And Lewis and I, and even, when I was sort of talking to Lewis about leaving Lee and Hayes and what that mean and everything else, and Lewis was very much of he's like, no, Rich, I need that execution guy and the deployment guy and be able to do that. And I also need the energy and vision from Lewis and understanding how important that is. How you find that, it's just been lucky for me, but I think it just starts by being engaged and meeting as many people as you can. I think the most underrated thing in the world is to ask questions, be intellectually curious, and as part of that, sort of understanding who you are and who the people around you are, and then being willing to make a decision.
So then how do you know when you're kind of meeting some of those people and getting to know really what you want? How do you know when something is a bad idea or a bad opportunity?
I've made a lot of bad choices, so I don't know if you really do. And I think it's not a perfect analogy, but I remember I was talking to the chair of the board at Next IT, Johnny Humphreys, his name. Has been one of my greatest mentors in my life. And, I was talking to Johnny about some of the changes we needed to implement and what it was going to look like and how we're going to do it. And I was like, Johnny, I don't know necessarily what we should do or how it should be. And he's like, Rich, when you're driving a car going 80 miles an hour and you see a cliff in front of you, any decision you make is going to be better than just continue with what you're doing. So just make a decision and then be willing to adjust from there. And so I don't know if I think it's, one of the slides I had up in there that I pulled out was a lesson learned around no decision is a decision. And I bias heavily in favor of making a decision, understanding the materiality of that decision, and then adjusting quickly to it. And so I don't know if you'd ever know until you try. Give it a shot, see what it's like. And so if you're not certain on something, maybe you don't, you meet someone that has a great idea. You come to Sparks Weekend, which I encourage everyone here to do, and meet some other entrepreneurs, jump into a 72-hour sort of exercise of building out a business plan and seeing what that feels like, or do that one. Do it on the side. Maybe you don't quit your job right away, but try it, and then see how it feels, and then go. So try, experiment, but I don't think you ever really know. And
Right.
if you almost in anything in life, if you want to have absolute certainty on anything, you're just going to keep doing what you're doing.
And if you do have questions, anyone, please just raise your hand. I'll just keep looking out, seeing if there's a hand up. You said that you'd made many mistakes.
Mhm.
Another thing my students may know about me is I'm a huge Bob Ross fan.
Yeah. Okay.
And Bob Ross said, you don't have mistakes, you just have happy accidents.
Mhm.
So of all these many mistakes you've made, if they're just happy accidents, was there anything that was seemed like a mistake at first, but then after a while you realized this actually was a happy accident where you had some great opportunity because of it?
Well, it was so I go to Next IT and raised a bunch of money. The law firm couldn't believe I was leaving, and they said, hey, Rich, if this is about you being in Spokane, you wanted this one, we will give you the same compensation. You need to be willing to travel back here as your clients need, and be able that one. So I actually said I made a mistake with Next IT, and I actually went back and signed a letter to go back to Canal Gates and be able to do it. I said, okay, this was a huge mistake. What am I doing? I've got a 4-month-old son. This company has 4 months of runway. The projections that we raised this money on are not coming through for us. We're burning through cash at a unsustainable clip, and thought it was a massive mistake. Fortunately, the board talked me out of that and then put me into the role of running the company to do it. But that was something that was, at the time, I thought I had thrown my career away and was the biggest mistake I ever did. And now I'm just so thankful that Fred brought me in. The board trusted me to put me into that role, and it set me off on a journey that's been so unbelievably fun.
Happy accidents.
There you go.
Gets us to where we are.
Mhm.
So with your most recent project, working out Moat.
Yep.
When we were talking the other day, you were explaining to me, and I pretended to understand what you were
Mhm.
talking
Yeah.
about because there were numbers in there, and I don't understand numbers. I'm in an accounting program, but I don't understand math.
Mhm.
You were showing me all the different things that you do, the modeling you use to try to project valuation with companies and projects they could be working on. Better than me, could you explain a little bit about what it is that you really are doing now
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, well, on a day-to-day basis, I'm trying to sell software now, so and get out there and do that. But what Innovation Alpha is doing, and we've got two go-to-market strategies. Is one is the license of this software platform that's designed for enterprises, so businesses, and then also for investors and people doing acquisitions and the M&A, sort of what we call deal pros on this one. And for the enterprise space, so for big technology companies, you've got, I forget how many patents Amazon has, but it's massive. But for the most of these big technology companies are not looking to sue people. They don't want to be offensive with their strategy. What they want to be able to do is ensure that they have the freedom to operate. Sort of dirty secret is they all know there's some level of infringement going on. There's too much overlap and connection between the two, but you want to make sure that you've got the freedom to operate. And so you're building out these detente books, which helps you understand where and how and why you should be building out your portfolio. And so we help those companies identify where they should be, where their competitors are innovating. So all of a sudden we're seeing an innovator going into this space. Do they want to look at it from a product perspective and an innovation perspective? Where should they be building? Where are they building that's not necessarily protected and they want to be protected against that one? If they are sued, what should their litigation strategy be around that one? But it's all around quantifying innovation behavior and tying it to revenue streams for that particular company. And it's the same thing for the acquisition context or an investor context. It was, you know, I was on a investor call about an hour ago, and I don't think I told this story already, but tell me if I did. But so Reuters did an interview with Reuters a couple weeks ago, and they reached out for some insights around Tesla's robotaxi unveiling, and they're doing a story around that unveiling, and and I caught their attention by saying Tesla doesn't have the innovation behavior to support this initiative. They're not really doing it. And so Reuters bid on it. Chris, the journalist, got a hold of me, and it turned into a 90-minute conversation. And so what our tool allows you to do is to go in and assess Tesla's historical innovation behavior. What have they been filing in and around? Where have they not? Where are their holes? What's their competition doing on this one? And so then when you pull up, so Tesla's going to market, so you sort of sit there intuitively, and this is what Chris was saying. Well, wait a second, how can this be, Rich? He's like, Tesla has a full service driving solution. And so, and they're aspiring to be a level 5 autonomous vehicle company and be able to do that. And I said, yeah, that's absolutely right. But it's NVIDIA's innovation. That at the end of the day, and that we can show that it's what Tesla's going to market with is ultimately NVIDIA's end-to-end true AI sensorless approach to level 5 autonomous driving, which is fine for Tesla, but to the extent that you're sort of have an investment thesis that Tesla is going to differentiate itself in the market long term based on a autonomous vehicle solution, you're wrong. That's not their innovation behavior. If you're investing in Tesla because you think the autonomous vehicle market will help drive demand for electric vehicles, and Tesla's the category leader in that one, then fine. But it sort of allows you to objectively benchmark a company's innovation behavior to understand what they're really doing, what their partners are doing, what their competitors are doing, what their exit scenarios. The other scenario that we've signed up for venture capital firms, and they're using it entirely to assess the exit scenarios for their portfolio companies. That on the initial stage, so you sit there and you talk to a founder, and invariably talk about, okay, we're the only ones doing this in this space. Here's who our logical buyers are going to be in this or that thing. And we have the ability to go in and say, okay, well, let's look. Have they missed their technology window? And if they haven't, or they have with some, who are those real buyers? And if pick whatever logical big buyer is going to be, your strategic buyer you think is going to be out there, you say you're doing it different. We have the ability to go in and actually show, okay, within this particular technology area, this is what they're doing in that space as compared to this one. So if it's different between the two, it's like, yeah, that creates an exit story, but it allows that VC investor sort of as part of we call the discovery phase to assess sort of the founder's assertions around exit opportunities and diligence it before they have to spend the few hundred hours really digging into it.
So not everyone has the opportunity to come in and lead companies like this. Sometimes you have to start from the ground up in companies. So if students were interested in getting into that kind of an industry, coming from a business program, what do you think would be good steps for them to take to get into this kind of work?
Just get started. It's especially startups are amazing because they're not for everyone. There's a level of fearlessness, and sort of the attributes that I care. I don't care about pedigree. I don't care about really honestly experience or where it is. I care about fearlessness and just willingness to get in there and work hard and learn and grow. And for the people that have been most successful working with me, a lot of them started out in fairly low level jobs. A junior level financial analyst, a junior level marketing person, the associate salesperson. But you just get into that environment and you put yourself out there and you work hard and be fearless and work with conviction and sort of let your underlying talent reveal itself, and it'll get recognized, and just do it.
Now, what happens for you next after Moat? Because you've gone through so many different industries. What haven't you done that you still want to do?
Yeah, it was. I was telling Lisa this. I said, I have no clue. I've never thought out anything in my life, so I'm not going to start now.
Go back to skiing.
It's probably spending even more time up in the Silver Valley and sitting on my deck drinking beer. But no, I want to see this thing through. We have what's cool about Moat is, so we've got Innovation Alpha, and that's a compelling space by itself, and that's a PitchBook, sort of the dominant player in what they call the private data company market, and they're doing 650 million of revenue that year. We also fit in what they call the alternative data market. So the alternative data market is for investors that are looking at non-publicly available information, not insider information, but information that is just not readily available. So back when I first started investing, it was pre-internet, and even the ability to get financial statements for a publicly traded company was unbelievably difficult. You'd go down to your broker's office and you'd be going through sheets of paper and looking at financial statements that were at least a quarter old. So with the sort of democratization of investor information, investors are looking for that information edge, and so we're working with a number of primarily quant trading firms, but also some fundamental firms, and we're giving them raw data feeds around innovation data. So we can take any company, and so that ability to map a company by market and product. So you take NVIDIA, or I'll use Micron as an example. It's a company that I kind of recently got an interest in, or about a year ago, using Innovation Alpha. And you said, okay, is that really just a memory chip company? And is that the right comparison? Or looking at sort of what they're filing in and around and the applications for that particular space, you say, oh no, what Micron's doing is building out an AI application to handle the latency issue around artificial intelligence. And so and we can expose that by what we call sort of innovation implied financial metrics that doesn't take the company based on an industry designation or CPC codes or anything else that you want to use. It looks at their demonstrated innovation behavior and then understands their peer group within that behavior, so you can sort of create a signal. And so we're also selling raw data feeds into those markets.
Well, we only have about a minute left or so. I just want to give anyone a chance if you have a question right here in the front.
So you were talking about you've made a lot of regrets throughout your life, and currently I'm a junior here at Eastern. Okay. A junior here at Eastern Washington University, and I'm curious what your biggest regret was at my stage in life.
Oh boy. So my junior
We
year,
got to keep it appropriate for the audience.
there was this cute girl
Right.
down and no. It's I think it's going back to what James told me. I mean, I really don't have regrets. I think there's been situations in life where, and I say it to my boys all the time, and Lisa and I talk about it, where don't play afraid. Just don't play afraid, and be willing to go for it. And the only time in my life where I've sort of had regrets is when I played afraid, and I was unwilling to go for it, and it was safer to just sort of hide a little bit, and not do it, and expose yourself. And and it's even like, I mean, look, I was one of 8 equity partners at a national IP firm, running and walking away from that to do it. I mean, that's dumb. It's dumb to walk away from a partnership position at a major international law firm and do that one, but just don't play afraid. And so the only time and be willing to go for it. And it takes courage to do that, because you're exposing yourself, and be willing to put yourself out there and be able to do it. And so the only time I've sort of really had reservations or regrets is when I didn't do that. And so back when I was, a junior in college, my junior year, I was an exchange student in Belfast, Northern Ireland. I just enrolled as a normal student in the university, so I didn't go over with a cohort. So I was the only American in the class in the middle of Belfast. They just is the Mitchell Accords. They just signed the Mitchell Accords. This was 96, 97, and then came back. And my advice to you would be, whatever it is that you want to do, whether it's fun or business, just go for it. And if that means go travel Europe, if it means start a business, if it means do it, just go for it. And don't have any regrets, because especially at your age, you're never going to have, you've got the opportunity to do things in a low leverage situation that you'll never have again in your life.
And the real trick is to find that business that is fun for you as well.
Yes. Yeah. Never get stuck. And that goes back being afraid. Nothing's worth doing if you're miserable.
Well, Rich, we are out of time. We're the only thing that's keeping everyone from being able to have some food, I think. So I want to thank you for coming out and speaking with us tonight. It was a pleasure getting to meet you the other day and then talk with you again tonight. We do have a gift, I believe, so I'll turn it back to Dr. Jones here.
All right. So this concludes the formal part of the program. Can we give Richard Denenny a big Eastern round of applause? So just by the way, our wonderful AV team is going to be producing a talk of a tape of the talk that should be available on the business school's YouTube channel within, Nick, how long? A couple of weeks, a week? Okay, so if you want to go back and I think you noticed that Richard talks kind of fast, and you're probably trying to keep up with him. So you can go back and review that. So now's the time for mingling over food. And I just want to suggest to all you students, I know you don't have this, which is a business card, but I'd like you to get out and talk to some people that are different than you, out of your comfort zone. Maybe talk to professors you don't know. And by all means, come up and talk to Richard. I'm sure you'll stick around for questions.
Yeah, of course.
And hopefully some food. Just want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank our lead sponsor, which is Washington Trust Bank. We couldn't do this without you. And I just want to wish everybody a wonderful, hopefully dry evening. And now for the food and drink, which is near the entrance. So.
And Dr. Jones, we did want to present him with this
right.
award for
That's right.
coming and speaking with us. Rich, this recognizing you as a distinguished speaker coming and speaking to EWU. We really appreciate your time tonight.
Well, thank you. This is awesome. And I haven't had this reminds me of Rick, the deal plaques we get. So this will take his place on the wall. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have fun, mingle, and talk to Richard Denenny.
That was fun. Yeah, that's good.
Cool.